One of your team's favorite things for you to say is, "Hey, when this happened, I was wrong."
Oh, yes.
Would you say that's true,
Oh,
April?
love it.
They love it. It's their
Yes,
favorite thing.
yes, yes.
And you have to have the humility as a leader to admit that you were wrong, admit that you made a mistake,
Vulnerability.
and move on and move past that. Welcome to the Todd Barn Leadership Podcast. Like and subscribe wherever you listen to this content, and share it with a friend.
Okay, Pastor Todd, we're back with another heavy topic this time. You know, last time you took us through unpopular decisions, which you let us know are very important as a leader, and we need to expect those and how to navigate them. Let's dig into making mistakes as a leader.
Oh, well, I never make mistakes, so.
Well, there might be a few people listening in who maybe make a few mistakes, and
There's a lot of people listening in that think I make mistakes, so it's all right.
well, there's a lot of people sitting in this room who think that you make mistakes, Pastor Todd.
Yeah.
But so tell us, is a good leader defined by how little mistakes they make?
No, I mean, you learn the best from your mistakes. You know what I tell people in leadership and in coaching them, you know, a lot of people ask me, when is someone ready to take over a part of your church? And my answer is always when they're 70% as good as you. Now you're like, well, it should be higher than that. Well, here's the thing. If somebody's 70% as good as you, they know enough to take over, and they know enough to make the mistakes to learn themselves, because everybody is going to make mistakes, but oftentimes it's your mistakes. I mean, would you say this? It's your mistakes that you learn your biggest lessons.
Oh, I don't forget the lesson. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when you're leading people, if they're 70% as good as you, that means they're passing.
Yes.
They can pass as what you need. And then the rest of the 30% is going to be taught to them by the school of hard knocks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You get the Karen in the church that they forgot to do something, and now they're all up their hind parts, because I can't say but on the podcast because my mom listens. But they're all up in their business.
All up in their grill.
Yeah. Because they forgot to do something or made a mistake.
Yeah.
And you know what? That teaches them all the lessons that they need to. That teaches a lesson that I can never teach them.
Yes.
Because now they know that Karen, and if your name is actually Karen, we're not talking about you at Karen. All. And I'm very sorry for all the Karens out there that Karen is now an adjective that we use to describe people. Or is it a verb? I don't know. I'm not English theology. But anyway, you can't teach them that stuff. That is the stuff that they have to learn from the school of hard knocks. And, you know, listen, there's mistakes that I've made as pastor that I've learned from. And it's because of those mistakes that anytime things happen, I'm always very wary about these things, because I don't want to make those mistakes again. Because oftentimes, unfortunately, as a leader, when we make mistakes, those mistakes hurt people. And it's they hurt people or they hurt the church. It's hard to make a mistake where you don't hurt somebody or hurt the church. And trust me, once you make those mistakes, you don't make them again, because you learn in the school of hard knocks.
Something one of my mentors shared with me is that I struggle. I had very demanding parents. They were both very type A, goal setters, and
I don't know
drivers.
what that's like at all.
I don't know why. And yet they both complain about the way I am now. So I know they're not listening, and I can say that. But it's
mine
their fault.
are, so I have to be careful.
It's their fault. But it is that it made me scared to make mistakes.
Right.
And so I have a kindergarten teacher. I shared with Maddie right before we started recording that making mistakes helps you grow. And my kindergarten teacher said that, and it always stuck with me, but it went against everything and how I was raised and setting me up in life. But one, I have a really, really, really great team. But what I have seen is that when I make a mistake and I just own it in real time and let them experience it a little bit the way that I'm walking through it, they respect it, because what they're hoping I see, what they're hoping I learn, or if it does hurt them, they get a little bloody from the mistake or the decision that I made, because I am walking through it in real time and processing it and trying to catch the lesson, they respect me more. And they are more apt to follow along when they know I'm making a mistake, but they know I need to do it or they're not going to question it and follow me anyway. We walk through the mistake gracefully as a team. And I feel
Yeah.
like respect is there.
One of your team's favorite things for you to say is, "Hey, when this happened, I was wrong."
Oh, yes.
Would you say that's true,
Oh,
April?
love it.
They love it. It's their
Yes,
favorite
yes,
thing.
yes.
And you have to have the humility as a leader to admit that you were wrong, admit that you made mistakes,
Vulnerability.
and move on and move past that. And just say, I said to the we'll go behind the veil because I know this is April's decision and she can be mad at me in the room. I said at our Easter debrief, they were giving away free popcorn on Easter. And I said, I thought to myself, who the heck is going to eat popcorn at 8:30 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning? You guess, April,
We couldn't even make it fast enough. We were slinging popcorn like you would not even believe. You would have
And
thought we were.
so I said, and I saw the look on your face. I said, I thought it was dumb to give away popcorn, and I was wrong. And I could see on your face that I just ticked you off.
Actually, what he said was, that was a dumb idea. Whose idea was that? And then my face responded, and he said, oh, but they ate it and enjoyed it.
And I said,
But it worked out. Yeah.
I said I was wrong.
Well, but in that moment, we had what the other part of that conversation was it kingdom focused? Was it kingdom minded?
Sure.
Was it a best use of resources, time, volunteers, and all the things? And had it been a mistake and been a disaster, which it has been before, Zoe, I know that you will be listening, so chuckle when you remember our snow cone fiasco with a shack full of I don't know, there's 300 people in there.
And you'll slow
All the
cone
staff
maker.
is tremoring, just remembering this. And the snow cone machine wouldn't work, but we had the idea.
Yeah.
We never flushed it back out. Zoe and I didn't even know how to operate it and had promised the entire church snow cones. And so we made a mistake. But listen, every sweat bead that poured down our face, we were never going to drop the ball or make that kind of mistake again. But a conversation had happened. That's too much. That's too much. And I had pushed and pushed. I got it. I got it. I got it. Well, I didn't have it. And so I won't forget to make sure I know how to work the snow cone machine again.
Well, and that's the thing. You have to let people make mistakes.
You have to be, yeah.
And a lot of times the problem is, as leaders, sometimes we're unwilling to allow our people to fail. And it's in their failures that they learn the most, because we love them so much, we care for them so much that we just don't want them to fail.
Almost like a parent. I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did.
Right. And sometimes you just have to let them.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to let them take their lumps. Sometimes you have to let them get yelled at. Sometimes you see that you're like, you are going to get yelled at by so-and-so for doing this, but you're like, you know what? I got yelled at by so-and-so and it grew me, and it can grow you too. And that's okay. Because we learn from that. We learn our greatest things from that. We have our sweet Miss Ruby, in our church that, I have learned, to tell the staff that, it's Miss, is it Miss Ruby approved? You can say whatever, whatever you say. If it's Miss Ruby approved, the reason I know that is because there's been some times that I've done some things that weren't Miss Ruby approved, and she let me know, and she was so sweet and kind about it. But I felt about this big, which, if you're listening, is very small. But it stuck to me. Now, Miss Ruby was kind. She was gracious. She was loving to me.
But you learned.
She was empowering. But around here, and you have this wherever you're at in a church. Miss Ruby and Jesus, they're like right
Best
next
friends.
to each other. Yeah,
absolutely.
And we all have those spiritual giants in our church.
Yes, and we respect her and love her very much. Yeah.
And when they check you, you're like,
because you know that you're not in the right.
Sometimes I have to let y'all get checked by Miss Ruby to feel what you feel, so that you'll have that same check in your spirit one day when you want to do something crazy like I did. And funny enough, what Miss Ruby checked me about, we were doing, that was back in the day when we used to do announcement videos. I think that was long before you came.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. And do you remember the video where we let one of the interns dress up as a girl?
I do.
And so Miss Ruby said, I think in our climate that's not really a good
Yeah.
idea. And she was 100% right, but I hadn't thought about it.
No, nobody in the room had.
Yeah.
Well, and the vulnerability and the mistakes though, and allowing the correction, I would say it makes you stronger.
Well, and
Makes you stronger as a leader.
all she said is, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's all she said. She didn't yell at me. Oh, you're a no down. You know, she didn't do that. No, not at all. She just said, all she had to say to me was, I don't think that's a good idea. And everything in me went, oh, you're so stupid.
But that will
Why did you
carry
do that?
on to decisions. Well,
Right.
hindsight is always 2020.
Sure.
But you're going to carry Miss Ruby's correction. You're going to carry that mistake, that
Yeah.
poor decision. You will carry it on into other things beyond just that, because now you have that thought process, that perspective to think a little bit past it.
And I won't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
You know, there has been other times that people have talked about dressing a boy up as a girl, and I always say, no.
This is how I learned that story. I actually wanted Jet and Diesel to do a funny bit
Yeah. I
for
remember
the
that.
women's conference because of something we had done at a Bloom event. And I got told that story. And at first I was mad. Everybody was like downing it. And then as the story started unfolding, I was like, I would have never thought of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It was so innocent and so lighthearted.
Yeah, our culture has grown past that.
Yeah.
It used to be funny.
Yes.
15 years
Yeah.
ago that
Now
was
it's
funny.
not, especially in the
Now-
church.
Yeah,
Right.
now with the polarization of, you know, gender fluidity and all that stuff, it's not funny
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
anymore. But you never thought about that.
No, because my
until-
mind doesn't. Yeah.
Right.
No, I didn't think.
Because we're pure of heart. And not to say Miss Ruby's not pure of heart, but she's full of wisdom and
Yes.
discernment. And I needed to be checked at that time. And that was what needed to happen. So
Would you say that when we are leading by example, it is a really good form of accountability for us?
yes. Because there's never more of a humbling process than when you've made a mistake and everybody in the room knows you made the mistake. And it's obvious to them to just sit there and say, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, it is so hard for me when
The
somebody.
hardest sorry I ever had to say is I let a staff situation go on too long before I handled it. Everyone in the room, it was broken by it. Everyone in the room probably still needs counseling to this day because of that mistake. And I sat before them and I said, hey, I let this go on too long and I'm very sorry. I was trying to love these people adequately. And I'm very sorry that I let it go on for too long. I hope that I don't need you to forgive me now. I hope that one day you will be able to forgive me. But I want you to know that I've learned from these mistakes and you will see a different me from this point on. And thankfully, everybody in that room has stayed since then. I kind of felt at the time that everybody wanted to quit after all that. And I know many have confirmed that it had gone through their minds at that time, but it just took me just sitting there and saying, hey, I know what I did was wrong. And I'm sorry. You know, I was well-meaning by it. There was no malice in my heart behind doing it, but it just happened. And I told them all that I've learned and I will get better. And I will do my best to not let it happen again. Because I can't say I won't ever let it happen again because I'm a human. And now all of our staff has stayed, and nobody left because of that. That's not to say we haven't had people leave for other positive, good reasons.
Bye, Zoe.
Bye, Zoe. Zoe was the only one in that room that left, but she didn't leave because of that.
Right.
Remember, you've heard she left me for Ryan DeBose, and that's okay. Ryan's much better looking than me. It's all right. We love you, Zoe. Have fun in Dallas, but Cleveland is way better than Dallas. Well, Fort Worth is better than Dallas.
There you go.
That's not
nice recovery.
That's not part of your podcast. So
So it sounds like, though, do you think that it was necessary for you to be accountable in that mistake, in that moment, even though, I mean, as a leader, a lot of times the mistakes we're making per se aren't always just by our hand. A lot of time they're multifaceted. Other people are involved and there's lots of decisions, all things you can't just always sit down and speak to the people you're leading about.
Well, everyone in that room, when I said that, everyone needed to hear it.
Mm.
Um,
So was it about trust? Was it about
it
accountability? A
was
little
about
bit of everything?
trust. It was about healing something in y'all's heart. You needed to know that as your leader, I was aware of what was going on. Now, I think you all understood in that moment. I wasn't aware to the gravity of all that was going on,
Yeah.
because you all kind of shared more with me
Yeah.
after it had been taken care of. But you all needed to know that I was acknowledging what had happened, and that you needed to know in your heart that I was sorry. I was truly sorry. I didn't do anything other than allow it to go on longer than it needed to. I don't think I actually did anything to any of you other
Right.
than just to let it go on too long. And I just acknowledged to you, I know that this was my fault for letting it go on too long. And I'm sorry. And I will do my best to change whatever needs to be changed in me, to not let this happen again. And it goes back to what I talked about in the last episode. I want everybody to like me. And if, unfortunately, there's times when I have to push back at people and they don't like me, that's really hard for me to do. But because of this situation and all the hurt that I saw because of it, I have less cares about that than I used to. I still care and I still want people to care, but I have less cares about that than I used to, because I saw the pain. Because you could feel, like, honestly, in the room at the time, you could feel the pain in the room. But I knew it needed to be said, and I knew I had to say it and nobody else, um, because y'all needed to let go of that. And not that y'all were holding on to it, but you needed to hear that from me to start the healing process in your heart.
Well, and I want to stay right there for just a second, only because it's a very heavy topic.
Yeah.
But I also would imagine there are a lot of leaders sitting there right now saying, "But Pastor Todd, you don't know my situation. I'm sitting here in charge, and these situations are not by my hand, yet somehow I'm left holding the bucket." What do you say to a leader like that doesn't understand that the mistake is still theirs to carry, the burden is still theirs, and the responsibility is still theirs, the accountability is still theirs
Mm.
to be had for their organization? What do you say to those people who are saying, Pastor Dodd, I hear you and that sounds great and I do all those things, but you don't understand this situation?
Well, what you have to understand as a leader is if you want to sit at the top, everything flows downhill to you.
Hmm.
And whether you like it or not, you have to take the brunt of everything. And though, and in this situation, honestly, I had done nothing to anyone other than just not nip something in the bud fast enough. That is literally all I had done. And really, with our processes with our elder board, and I'm not the only one that could nip something in the bud. It just didn't happen quick enough. But they all needed to hear from me that I know it didn't happen. I know the processes weren't good, and we will make the necessary adjustments. Your people just need to hear from you. Hey, I see what happened. I see what happened was
Why do you
wrong.
think it's important that they need to hear it from you, from the leader?
Because they need to know that you're competent enough as a leader. Because they need to know that you won't allow them to be hurt. You will do your best to not allow them to be
Trust.
hurt like that again. It's a trust thing. And that's not to say you're going to be perfect. That's not to say you're never going to make a mistake again. That's not to say that you're not going to have the same issue happen again. But they need to know that you see what happened. You see where you missed something, and you're going to do your best to make it better. And people just need to know that they're seen.
Yes.
They just need to know.
Well, because as a leader, everyone is looking to you.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
in charge of everything. If you're their leader, you're in charge of everything. And so they're looking to you
Well,
and they need to trust you.
and if your team
Yeah.
if your team is worth their salt, they'll run through the wall and then some for you. And you may not feel like that. You're like, my team. If they're there and they're working for you, they're there day to day and Sunday after Sunday, give it up holidays, family holidays, kids' birthdays, to be there, to sweat with you. They'd run through a wall with you. They also need to know that when you screw up, you love them enough to say, hey, I messed up. And it's the same is true with our children. You know, our kids get hurt at school. And I tell them all the time, I said, guys, I'm sorry this world is just so awful. I'm sorry that these kids don't grow up in a family that you
Yeah.
grew up with. And is that my fault? No. The only thing that's my fault is I had kids to come into this world the way it is. That's the only thing that's my fault.
Yeah.
But the way I lead my kids is just apologize and help and empathize with them and say, I know it's a bad world. I'm sorry, but I still love you. And sometimes your team just needs to hear, I'm sorry, but I still love you.
Well, and my biggest thing is I feel like as we're coming to the halfway point here, I feel like where you're bringing us is that mistakes are going to happen.
Yes.
And something that you have shared with Jess and I early on when we came on is that we need to expect them. Jess and I are both older siblings. I would say we're sort of type A, depending on what day of the week it is for Justin. Sometimes he's a very compliant grandpa, and sometimes he's a driven, very type A. You just don't know. He's very diverse. But what was hard for us is not knowing it all and not getting it right all the time. And we would internalize mistakes and take them negatively. But as we built this relationship of trust with you, it became easier to make a mistake and bounce back from it. And I feel like when we talk in an organization or you hear an HR director, like during onboarding, they say that, we're all about trust, and trust is everything. We teach it to our kids, and expect it in our relationships. But I feel like how you handle mistakes or shortcomings in any relationship speaks a lot about you. And it's hard to have a culture of trust when mistakes are not handled appropriately or when they're expected. So if you were a leader who hires the best of the best and you expect everyone to know how to do everything, you have a culture that mistakes are not accepted. And I would say that affects production and maybe a little bit of innovation or vision in your team.
Yeah, I mean, and it can. And I would say, if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing the envelope.
You're
enough.
not learning anything.
Yeah, you're not pushing the envelope enough. I mean, here in church, one of my favorite phrases with the staff, and April's heard it 100 times, is, "Well, let's try it. Let's try it and see what happens." I'm welcoming mistakes, but when we're trying something, we know if it's a mistake. We know, hey, if it's a mistake, we're not going to do this again.
Yeah.
But your best innovation comes with testing things out.
Right.
Apple never built the iPhone without having failures. I don't know if you know this. I'm just an Apple nerd. The Apple actually invented the iPad before they invented the iPhone, but they saw that the world was not ready for a tablet computer, so they put the cell phone out first because they weren't ready for that. And so I hope that's right. The fact checkers out there will tell me if it's not. But when I read Steve Jobs' book, I that's what I understood. And the thing is you have to try things, you have to test things, and if you look at companies, especially innovative companies, they have failures. iPhone, I would say iPhone is one of the most successful smartphones, but there's been versions of the iPhone that have been flops. Mm-hmm. Why? Because Apple was innovative enough to try something and let it fail. And when it fails, it is happening. In fact, right now, the iPhone 16, we were talking about before we filmed that we both have iPhone 16s. Did you know the iPhone 16
Pro?
Yeah, the iPhone 16 is a flop. Do you know why? Because they promised with the Apple iPhone 16 Pro, Apple Intelligence would come with it. Well, Apple Intelligence is a flop right now because they haven't innovated fast enough to get there. And so Apple has a moment when they come out with the iPhone 17, which is usually about late summer and mid to late summer. They have an opportunity to go say, hey, iPhone 16 users, we're going to make this right this way. Now they have a moment. Now they can either do it then or not, but all eyes of the tech world is going to be watching. I'm a tech nerd. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to be watching now.
Yeah. And they have an opportunity to redeem the Apple Intelligence, which is their AI, which they promised on the 16, which is junk. We were promised a more intuitive Siri that would check with ChatGPT and give us answers. and it's junk. And I'm an Apple fan, so don't shoot me. And so they have an opportunity as an organization to admit a flaw and move forward because they were innovating, but they didn't innovate fast enough. They didn't
Right.
catch up. And so they have an opportunity to make it better. Now, how they handle that will determine on whether or not their customers trust them or not. The same is true with the church. When we run on the edge like we do, when we flop, we have to go, hey, we were trying something. I'm sorry. Here's how we're going to make it better.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and we have to do that as leaders. And so I hope that the CEO of Apple is going to get up there and go, hey, I know we dropped the ball on this. I'm sorry.
I was listening to this podcast and I really
Yeah.
felt led.
And I really felt led. Yeah. Well, I mean, and even Apple's not great with doing that. Under Steve Jobs, they were. Under their current CEO, I forget his name, as it is right now. But, they just updated to the USB-C connector from the Lightning. Well, they said they're working to make it better and more seamless for us. No, 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 no. They were sued in Europe and had to do it. And so he's not been a great
See, and to me,
CEO.
those kind of, for me personally, and I bet there are a lot of people who will start shaking their head as soon as I say this. In those situations, you break my trust. I do not see that you made a pivot. I do not, when you whitewashed it, I saw lack of accountability
Right.
and that you learned nothing, and it creates distrust. And that's why I kind of brought that, why I feel if I know my team trusts me, I know that they trust when I apologize and when I own it. I know that they trust when I say, bear with me. Just trust me. Let's just do
Yeah.
it. I know that they really mean that because I have no problem looking at them. As a matter of fact, recently there was a conversation that had happened and it was remembered 3 or 4 different ways. I was the one that created the confusion. And then after getting upset at my team for it, I had to come back and let me tell you, it was like swallowing a mountain going, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I did all of that. I went back. You tried to tell me and I would not listen.
Yeah.
Then I got authoritative. And here are all the things that I got wrong. Why? Not to make them happy. I'm hoping that they trust me more because they already knew all the things I was owning up to. They'd
Sure.
already seen it. And 2, I want them to make the same decision
Right.
when they are in charge, when they are caring for someone, especially here in the church, because they're not just leading, they're discipling. And so I want to see that vulnerability. But I have a really hard time when people do that. What you're
Yeah.
saying about the Apple CEO, it immediately creates distrust because
Right.
why? Why do you have to whitewash it? Why not just say what happened?
Yeah, just say, you don't have to say they got sued. There's ways, as a leader, there's ways to spin things. Just say, hey, we have noticed that people don't want to carry 5 cords in their bag. So we have made it to where all of the connections are the same, but we've made it better. So if you want to sell your product,
Yes.
just say
Yeah.
how you made
Yeah.
it better.
You could
It's-
make it your idea
yeah.
and not say,
Yeah, but they just said, "Oh, well, we're just gonna make it more seamless." Blah 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 blah. Yeah, you whitewashed it, and the thing is, and sometimes you just, as a leader, just say, "Hey, I messed up. My mistake. It won't happen again." And sometimes that's all you're really asking. That's all people want to do. They're willing to forgive you because they can go to another church. They can.
Yeah.
We all have those people that just deuce out, never say anything, go to another church. They're still here. They're willing to give you another chance. Just say, hey, I messed up. My bad. Please forgive me. And most people will.
is there ever a point where we would be doing that too much or we shouldn't? Is there a time that
Well, as your
we make I don't want to use the word mistake. Let's pivot to the word decision. Maybe you make a decision that just does not fall the way that you need it to, all across the board. Not an unpopular decision, if you will, a poor decision. Or is there ever a time when you're not openly admitting those mistakes and having those conversations? Is there ever going to come a time where you might just need to be aware that this is, it's just a personal growth opportunity. There's no conversations to be had, or maybe you're owning too many mistakes and it is hindering your leadership. Is that ever going to be the case, or is it just
there's
best
some
policy?
Yeah, there's sometimes that's the case. I mean, if it's a sensitive decision that the whole church doesn't know about, Obviously you admit the mistakes to the ones that are aware of it, and then you just move on. But it's not always the case that you're going to make a decision that everybody needs to know about. I mean, there are times in the church, there's times when decisions happen that not everybody knows about, not everybody needs to know about, and you just
So
have
be
to.
mindful of the
Yeah,
sensitivity,
you just got to be
maybe.
mindful of the sensitivity, and not everybody needs to know about everything. Um, but you also don't want to be seen as deceiving or deceptive, and you have to be careful in that. And so I would say, especially you're going to be more mindful of admitting your faults to your team and your leaders. Always be open to do that, but you don't have to admit every fault to the church body at whole, because sometimes they'll distrust you over time if you're making a lot of. But that also goes back to what's the atmosphere of your church. Our atmosphere of Hope Church is we are innovative. And so
Hmm.
we're going to try things. And I say things from the platform. We are going to try this. And if it doesn't work, we'll do something else. It's still a mistake. But when you say that up front,
Yeah.
that's the problem. I think far too often as the church, we stand up there and said, I went to the mountaintop and the Lord told me to do this, and this is what we're going to do. Don't do that. Just say, hey, I think this is what God wants us to do. We're going to try it out and see if
Yeah.
he's there. And if he's not, we're going to pivot and do something else. We got to quit being like Moses coming down with the tablets from the mountaintop going, this is the word of the Lord. No, I mean, if you're convicted and you feel it's the word of
Right.
the Lord,
Yes.
there are times like we're coming up on our 15 years, and I'm going to preach what I think the Lord has put on my heart for the next 15 years. And I'm going to give as much detail as I'm comfortable with giving, but I'm going to know there's going to be those people
Yeah.
that are going to go back and pick through what I was right and what I was wrong about. And so I have to be careful if I'm saying this is the word of the Lord. I have to be confident that this is the word of the Lord. Let's just say planting churches. I feel that God has planting more churches in our future. I feel confident. Now, will I go to the specific details of how many and what places? I have those ideas, but I'm not as confident in those details as I am confident in that the Lord wants us to plant more churches. But the problem is, far too often, we're getting up there and saying, I felt the Lord tell me that we need a coffee shop in the church and it needs to happen now. I mean, I'm not saying God doesn't care about coffee. I'm a coffee lover, and I think that God truly does care about coffee. But do you really think the Lord, you need to go up to the mountaintop about the coffee shop all the time? No, you try it. If it doesn't work and your church doesn't like it and you make a terrible cup of coffee, you just pivot and you move on. I think the problem is we've spent so much time as the church touting that I made this decision because the Lord told me to make the
Yes. Oh,
decision,
yeah.
that there's more gravity to getting it wrong because the
Hmm.
Lord told you to do it.
Hmm.
Because then, are you not listening to the Lord?
Right.
I mean, because
Right.
if you're a pastor and you're not listening to the Lord, that's a problem.
Hmm.
And so it's really a lot of it has to do with how you frame it. And you got to frame things correctly. You can't, not everything needs to be a mountaintop, Holy Spirit.
Framing it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of where I was going because as an overtalker, especially when I get nervous, it's like that volcano that everybody's watching last night. Did you see it? It spewed the lava up like over 1,000 feet. Anyway.
April, like I told you, is it playoffs or the Railroaders? That is
Well,
all I'm
anyway,
focused
I
on
just
right now.
laughed because I said that is how I feel when I get nervous and I overtalk or I overexplain.
Yeah.
But I can also see in people's faces when I'm like, you know what? I really didn't have to admit all of that because now instead of, oh, okay, you've just given a little much. And what I would say is in those times, I kind of go to a mentor or I go to another leader and say, hey, I think I might be, and I think I might be a little too vulnerable, and
Sure.
I think it's working against me because what I would say is when, if one, I feel like we should always be praying as leaders and discerning that
Yeah.
with, especially within ministry, and like you said, the mountaintop Moses
Sure.
moment when in leading because those are your words, not actually mistakes of the Lord. So
Right.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
there's a fine line, but the reason I ask is because I feel like sometimes that there's a heart posture there too,
Yeah.
with your ability to make mistakes, the resiliency to which you come out of them and move past them and not obsess about them.
Right.
As an insecure person, I can tend to obsess about making mistakes for sometimes reasons that are irrelevant altogether, which is why I think this is such an important topic, because we know most confident people are actually insecure in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And so they might need just that little piece of, it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay for you. You should be teaching your church or your people that we're not perfect. One of my favorite things you say, which is probably not as funny as it is it is to me, Justin, I think it's hilarious, as you say, if you think if you're perfect, then get out and leave. You'll mess up the church, because our church is not perfect.
Right.
And it hits heavy, but there's so much power in that.
Yeah.
That none of us are perfect within the church or anywhere.
And it just goes back to what is the atmosphere that we've developed.
Yeah.
And that is, if you're perfect, get out, because we're not perfect. I've already told them I am not perfect, so don't expect that from me. I've told them before, I am your pastor. I will let you down. I'm your pastor, but I'm human. I will let you down. And with my staff, I've developed, let's try it. Let's try this. Let's see what happens. And so if I do that, if we have an experimental and innovative atmosphere, they're willing. If I'm gracious when they make mistakes, they're willing to be gracious when I make mistakes.
Oh, that is so good. Yes.
And that's the thing. If you're gracious with your staff when they make mistakes, they're going to be gracious with you when you make mistakes. And you've got to develop that atmosphere. And if you don't develop that atmosphere, then you're just it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard working.
Well, and there's so much rich learning there if the atmosphere is, I wouldn't say tolerant of mistakes, but accepting and understanding.
Well, I don't call it tolerant. I call it innovative. You can't push forward without mistakes.
Yeah.
We often
or
think
everybody's scared to do anything or make a decision or try anything.
some of the greatest inventions were brought out of mistakes. So for last night, you're going to judge me. I had a caramel sundae. Okay. Had a caramel sundae. Did you know that caramel was invented by mistakes? Because how do you make caramel, April?
I have no idea.
You overheat sugar and you burn it.
Okay.
That's how you make caramel. And so a chef overheated his sugar and made caramel, and he said, "Oh, this actually tastes pretty good." That's how you make caramel. And sometimes it's your mistakes
Interesting.
that innovate.
Well, I would have picked the Dr. Pepper story. I really thought that's where you were going to go.
Okay.
Maddie, did you
Well,
think that was the innovative story he was going to share? I definitely didn't see the
Tell me the
coming.
Dr. Pepper, because wasn't it by mistake too? Well,
I have no idea.
Well, the reason it's called 20. Didn't
I just
he do
know
23
it was,
times? 23 times, or WD-40.
I know it doesn't actually have prune juice in it. That I have learned.
Yeah, WD-40. WD-40 was the reason it's called WD-40 is it was his 40th try, I believe. Hey, leave that alone. And I believe it was his 40th try. We don't have to edit this out. We have an assistant today that's helping us.
Maddie is our director.
Yeah, she's doing a good job. But she was about to answer a phone call on your phone.
It's probably her bestie.
Yeah,
Oh.
and so we, sometimes it's in our mistakes that our mistakes is actually what God intended all along. But if we don't develop an atmosphere and where mistakes are tolerated, we're not going to have innovation. And that's what I hope you get from this is you will have no innovation in your church if mistakes aren't allowed to happen. Because if you have to get everything right, that is pressure. I mean, because if April, imagine
I was just born with the pressure to get everything right.
But
so
imagine if you also had me on
yes,
on top
I've had
of it.
jobs like that.
Yeah,
I've had
going,
jobs like that. It's exhausting.
If you had a women's event that nobody came to, and I'm on you like, how dare you do this? Waste the church money, blah, 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 right? I don't have to do that with you.
I'll beat you to it.
Right. Because I know that you're going to go, I ain't never doing that again.
Yeah.
Right. Because we've developed that atmosphere.
I've already decided where it went wrong and what I needed to do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have to swoop in and say that, but we've developed the atmosphere of, April feels comfortable that she can try, these out of the box, like the big, beautiful bill. I was joking with April. April has these very elaborate women's events.
We have some very, very, very skilled women's ministry.
Wordsmiths.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. She comes up with the most hilarious event titles, and I texted her and I in the group chat, and I said, hey, because sometimes she doesn't know how to get my humor, so I like to really knock her off her feet, and I said, Pastor was sharing this morning today at lunch that President Trump's got a new bill out, and I'm just wondering if you helped him name it. And she's very seriously, she's like, what? No, And I said, well, it's called the Big Beautiful Bill. And they all laughed because, that's who Summer is. And it was hilarious.
Her last women's event was Planted in Prayer. They've also have I Like Big Books and I Cannot Lie, where
that was elder approved
books.
For those listening in. We all held our breath. Our outreach director just went, actually, no, it was Zoe.
And so I went when Trump's Big Beautiful Bill came out, I said, did your women's team make the name for him? Because that's what it sounds like.
The women's ministry absolutely came in to, we'll be glad to assist you, President Trump, with any of your future
I would say
needs.
y'all's names are better than his, but it reminded me of Big Beautiful Bill. I'm like, oh, there's our women's team at work and even in the government.
President Trump, I hear you're being called to women's ministry. And your team, your interns. Tell your interns to call me. Yeah. So
all his interns are paid, though.
Sorry, interns. You work for Jesus.
Yeah, you work for the Lord.
So is there ever a time as a leader where we need to be managing mistakes? And it's a broad question on purpose.
Well, you need to manage mistakes when money's involved.
Okay.
You don't want to keep making costly mistakes, because costly mistakes will shut your organization down all the time. You need to manage mistakes when people's well-being are involved. Mm-hmm. Safety in our kids department is not somewhere we need to be making mistakes in a lot. Mm-hmm. That's not to say mistakes won't happen.
Right.
But you can't tolerate those mistakes well enough. You can't tolerate people that are blowing their budget and you can't tolerate that kind of stuff. And so
because those aren't mistakes.
Yeah, that's choices. Just being careless.
Yeah.
And so, when money's on the line, when well-being is on the line, when safety's on the line, when emotions of other people are on the line, you've got to manage the mistakes more in those situations. But that's not to say that you won't make mistakes, but those are far greater mistakes. But again, back to an innovative staff, when everyone speaks freely, you make less mistakes. And so, my staff knows that when we come in and we're taking a problem, I want everybody to talk. I'm not looking for you to sit there quietly. In fact, I get very irritated if I ask you a question and you sit there quietly, because I want the answers.
Yeah.
And when you develop an innovative staff and an innovative environment, everyone feels like they can speak freely. And when you have a groupthink going on, you have less critical mistakes, because people see things and people see.
Oh yeah, at our table it's
problems.
called right out before anybody even finishes their sentence, and I like that.
Yeah. And so you have less issues that, like, the critical mistakes that you're talking about. You have less of those because you have people that are already used to thinking through and already feel free enough that they can speak without getting their head chopped off. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. So,
well, and to me, if you're managing mistake, it's as multifaceted as maybe leading change in management.
Yeah.
It's individual.
Yeah.
And it can be constant at times, because while you're expecting the mistakes, you also need to be managing their mistakes, because especially if they're in the infancy of their leadership or professional growth. Okay, well, they understand. You don't want to be too understanding, because understanding can actually be jaded by the word tolerant.
Yeah.
And so when you are managing their mistakes and kind of leading them to show the difference, I feel like it almost bumps up their confidence to innovate and to produce.
Well, you also, kind of hearkening back to our last episode, you also have to help them understand the gravity of their mistakes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, especially lower level staff members, lower level leaders in your organization, don't understand the gravity of sometimes the mistakes that they're making. Like, oftentimes your staff, your higher level staff do, and you as a senior pastor understand the gravity. But I think sometimes people don't understand, hey, we've got people's spiritual well-being at our fingertips here.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakes are magnified sometimes,
Yes.
and you've
Yes.
got to understand the gravity of that. And I've had to tell people, hey, when you don't call people back, or you don't text someone back, or you make that careless mistake, you're affecting someone's eternity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just oh, hey, I forgot this and that and that, but yes, but this is eternity at stake. They put you at a pedestal at a high level.
Yes.
And if you can't take care of business, that's just, you're affecting other people. And so sometimes you have to help people understand that there is a gravity and a level of the mistake and mess ups that we have. You have to help them understand that, because if they don't grasp that, they don't see the importance of all the decisions that they're making all at one time.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I feel like both of these episodes over the last few weeks have been heavy, but I feel like they are necessary topics, because I think that they're topics that have so much information that I hope we at least get people to dig a little bit faster to grow. I hope they look past themselves and grow a little bit more and get some more information so that they can pastor their staff and their church at the same time.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Pastor Todd, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Todd Barn Leadership Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, press subscribe. If you're listening to us on any podcasting platform, you could rate and review us. That would really help out the show. We'll see you next time.